Hi, my name's Avi Federgreen. Welcome to Unleashed, a producer's guide to indie filmmaking. My name's Avi Federgreen. I'm a filmmaker, distributor here in Canada, and started this podcast to be completely transparent about our industry. And today, I'm so grateful to have Charles and Tina, who are great friends of mine from out west. North Vancouver, actually. Charles and I were we both DGC members and have been for many years. Charles a few more years than me. But also we were on the awards board for the DGC from its inception for the first approximately 11 years of the awards for the DGC. And we were super in sync about, our thoughts on filmmaking and things like that. And we've worked together in the capacity of IndieCan being a distributor for many of Charles and Tina's movies. And been trying to find a project to work together on for many years, which hopefully we'll get into that a little bit too. But why don't we start with Charles, you maybe, and Tina too, you've both been circled around the industry for many years. And I guess my first question would be, you were working as a director for many years, as a hired gun, so to speak, in movies of the week and that kind of thing, episodics and so on, and then decided to go on your own to do independent documentary cinema. I guess, what was the point where you decided to transition into independent cinema of your own, you and Tina partnering on all your projects? What was the impetus, and where do you think the industry, where it was and where it's going, and where our challenges are?
That's a real simple question. I could answer it with yes. Well, first of all, Tina and I have been involved in the film industry since she was born. Her father was a very well-known documentary filmmaker in Europe. And I've been directly involved in the entertainment business since I was 6, and pretty much non-stop, television and so forth. And so it was a pretty natural transition into filmmaking from television. And I started out in documentary, as a matter of fact. My first few films were documentary, but then it seemed like the winds of change were blowing in Canada at that time, and there was so much money available to make dramatic films, and the documentary scene had really dried up. We're talking about in the early 80s. And right. So I wanted to work like, everybody. Most people don't realize that, Francis Coppola started out making porn films. He just wanted to work so badly. And I think, while I never did that, I certainly wanted to work. Same thing with Steven Spielberg. He directed, really weird episodic stuff to get started, because we all did. You did yourself. We just wanted to work.
Right.
So I did a few documentaries, film board sort of thing, but then transitioned into Canadian drama, which I was in drama for years, as you said. And Tina and I produced a number of Canadian feature movies, My Kind of Town, Quarantine Max, and they all did pretty well. Critically, they didn't do so hot, but they made money. And then I did a ton of U.S. television movies for ABC, CBS, Disney, and all that. And they were fun, and it's fun to work in Los Angeles and stuff, and all over. But after a while, the scripts just seemed so stupid. Like, it was always like a guy with a gun and a brilliant but beautiful woman with a hairdo and a drug deal going down or something. And that's just not my lived experience. I have rarely done any of those things. So the opportunity came to stop doing that and to start doing something that I really cared about. So we made a picture about the downtown East Side in Vancouver, just a short film, half-hour film that you distribute down here. And I was working on other stuff, but it went out to the festivals and it just won everywhere. It did really well, in Venice even. And so that was kind of encouraging. And so then we started looking at a project that was happening in the north of BC, a big dam that was clearly a mega project that shouldn't be happening, like you've had so many of in Eastern Canada, Central Canada.
Yeah.
So we went up there and just on our own, with no money, the same thing as with down here, just decided, hey, I've got a camera. And at that time, I think somebody lent me a 7D. That's what we had, a Canon 7D, which I believe you had one of as well. And so I think one of our sons and I drove up there and way up north and just started working, and it turned into Peace Out, which you also distribute. And that won awards all over, and including at Hot Docs, which gave us a real burst of wind in our sails because they gave us this special jury award for something that I considered to be more or less a home movie. And interesting.
Yeah, we have to thank you for that, Avi.
Yeah, you encouraged us so strongly there. Yeah, and you said, go to Hot Docs. I said, no, Toronto hates me. And you said, how do you mean? Exactly. Who in Toronto hates you? And I couldn't really put my finger on it. But that was great, Avi. You did that. And I should really add, as a final to this opening statement, is that all through my career in drama, Tina was pretty lukewarm about much of the work that I was doing. Some of the episodic, it just seemed kind of pointless. And yet all the time I was making these home movies. We were making home movies together about our family, going down to Mexico and going through the Grand Canyon and stuff. And everybody around us said, wow, those are great. That's what you should do. And so I thought, okay, I'll make home movies then. And that's where Peace Out came from. It was essentially a home movie. And then everything we've done since, we've kind of approached as a home movie. And it's been great. It's gone so well.
Right. And they've had an impact, right? Like these docs can affect change.
Yes.
Which I think is part of the point, right? Which is the power that we hold as filmmakers to affect change. Most filmmakers don't take that into account when they're, making the projects that they're making. And in the narrative world, you can't really, most of these films don't affect any sort of change. Whereas in doc, they can. Things about climate, things about Alzheimer's or cancer or whatever the case may be. And you've spent a large part of your life now, both of you, telling stories that can affect change.
And we hope so. It's frustrating when you hear someone like David Suzuki saying that, hey, all I did didn't have much of an impact. And I would argue with him because I think he has had a huge impact on us. But it is sometimes frustrating, when you fight for something and then you lose in the end. We fought against the Side Sea Dam, we lost, so those projects.
And the Trans Mountain Pipeline.
Yeah, those projects, it's interesting. You get so invested, and it will help people to fight for other things, but sometimes you do not succeed, and it's very frustrating.
But there's a short animation by, you said, Yakilanas, one of the First Nations Haida guys. It's about a forest fire, and it kind of expresses the way I feel about this. There's a forest fire, and all the animals in the woods are going, oh, there's a forest fire, I can't do anything. And this hummingbird comes along, and it gets a drop of water from the lake, and it flies over the forest fire, and it drops it on the forest fire, and then goes back, gets another drop. And all the animals in the forest are laughing at him and saying, what are you doing? That's stupid. Why are you doing that? And he goes, because I can. It's all I can do.
Well, I mean, telling these stories raises awareness about the situation for which we're talking about in our films. And without that, most people, days go by and not know what's really going on behind them or in front of them. And I think that it's important. And maybe we don't necessarily win the big battle, but we're winning smaller battles all the time. That the way we make films can do things that other forms of activism or whatever can't.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think what you're doing is God's work, in my opinion, and I've said that to you before, that I'm a big fan of the two of you and the work that you do and the effects that you've had. I mean, you've empowered various communities who've wanted to play your film because of the effects of the subject matter for which you're talking about in your film, especially using an example like Peace Out. That that film played all over British Columbia, for example, because of the issue of the dam and the impact it had on British Columbia. And it brought a lot of people forward to help fight the fight.
Yeah. No, that's true. I think it's really important to drill down into this thing that we're talking about a little bit and try and understand why these films, and I mean, we make a few films, there are many, but why these films are so important. And that is because we don't have an agenda. We don't. Like when somebody makes an independent film, it's from their point of view. They speak, like, we speak the truth as we see it. And we don't have a sponsor who's saying, you can't say that. Occasionally, you know, we did a bunch of pictures with Knowledge Network, and some of them were fairly controversial. We talked about the tar sands a lot. They never once said anything, and that's to Rudy Butenhol's credit and to Murray Battle's credit. They never interfered in the process. We got to express what we felt from all the research that we done was the truth. We didn't have an agenda. This is not Suncor doing an infomercial saying, oh, there's jobs being created in the North. It's us saying, guys, there's another agenda going on here that's going to have some horrific consequences down the road. So the only time we ever got any caution at all was when we did the picture about Vancouver, no fixed address. And we basically laid the blame for the housing crisis in Vancouver at the feet of our premier, Christy Clark, at the time, and said that she knew that they were about to turn our housing market into a casino. And not only didn't they not do anything about it, they encouraged it because all their friends got rich. And once we had that in the film, I can't believe how naive we were. And we showed it at one of our cuts to Knowledge, and they went, we may have to consult with our lawyers on this, given that we're financed by the provincial government. So we had to tone it down a little bit. But still, independent films are independent. It's not a paid thing. Whereas when you see something on the networks, if it's not independent, it's not independent, right?
Well, the funny thing is about the housing crisis, Doc, it's super relevant now.
I know.
Yeah.
Like, it's super relevant now, and it's across the country, right? It's not
around
just
the world. Avi,
well, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a huge problem, and it's all because of government, right? Which is basically what your doc says.
And also willing participants. I mean, in that particular case, everybody's saying, oh, it's the Chinese. Those guys are buying up our houses. And the most of the speculation was being done by American investors and also Canadian local residents. We had a conversation with the real estate agent. He was saying, oh, those Chinese, and all these speculators. And then he said, yeah, there's this new development going in down the street here in West Vancouver. So I picked up a couple of units on spec. Hello? What did we just say?
Yeah.
So based on, doing all these films, during the sort of heyday of independent cinema, because it was somewhat of a heyday. Broadcasters were throwing some good money out to us to make films. So we actually got paid to make our films, although we did all the work, all the sweat equity was ours. We owned it, for sure. And with very little intervention, which is also extremely rare, to where we're at now, where, people like you and me are struggling to be able to get anything financed and off the ground because we're considered not worth getting involved with now. We're too old, or we're too this, or we're too that. And the money's dried up.
Yeah, I don't think it's the age so much. Werner Herzog keeps working, as do, Spielberg and Coppola, all those guys. But I think it's more flavor of the monthism, like we've seen that. And Tina and I were talking about that earlier today, that we've seen with the festivals that for the longest time, all they cared about was the quality of the work. And in the last maybe 6-7 years, we've seen it change dramatically, where there's this flavor of the month thing that comes on, where it has to be about this subject or it has to be about that subject. And if your film isn't about that, it doesn't matter how great the story is. They're just not interested. And for us, the festival circuit was everything. It drove everything that we did. Like, we'd make a picture for so little money, and it's not going to go, well, there was no Netflix at the time, but it's not going to get an Academy Award nomination, but it'd go to the festivals and it'd start building. And that would be our business model. Now, A, there's so much competition, but B, there's this flavor of the month thing that if we don't happen to have a film about what's the current topic, leprosy maybe, we don't have a film about that, so we're out of luck, you know?
Yeah, there's also, it's very overrun when you see that how many film schools we have and how many filmmakers are coming out of it. It's a huge competition thing. And so it's just one of those businesses. It's like in real estate, we suddenly have so many houses for sale here.
Yeah.
And so it's very hard to find your niche in there, you know,
Well, that's something.
and the festival market has it's I hear that from a lot of friends who go like, hey, I made this great movie and I cannot get arrested. I can't get it shown anywhere. So that is very frustrating, you know, for a lot of filmmakers, I think.
Well, we're seeing, like I was on the jury for one of the major documentary film awards this year. So I got to see 60 odd feature documentaries, Canadian ones. And what I noticed is that the trend is that somebody will gain access to a story, like their aunt was a rock star or something like that. And so they have access. The rock star says, yeah, I'd love it if my nephew or niece could become a filmmaker. So they get to make that film because they have access. Nobody else does. So they make the film and it gets programmed because the programmers think that people want to see movies about rock stars or sports heroes because that's kind of what's hot right now. And then that person, however good a job or a bad job that they do, the film comes out, everything's great, but then they're going, what do I do now? What do I do now? And so now they're just another person circling in the pool, wondering what they're going to do. And so I think about this quite a bit, that if you think that becoming a filmmaker is something that's going to be glamorous, it's because the only time you see us is when we're in this 1% of the time when it is glamorous, when you've got a film at the festivals and people are talking to you, they're interviewing you and stuff. But 99% of the time, it's a real slog. And unless it's something that you must do, you probably shouldn't be doing it because you're going to be so unhappy. Like, we're driven, we're storytellers. I've been a storyteller since I was a kid, for better or worse, you know, and Tina as well. So we have to do this. We don't really have any choice, but a lot of people do it for reasons other than that, and it's fine, go ahead, but I don't think you're going to be very happy. We are. I'm happy doing the slog. So are you. Like all the the business stuff is fine. It's great. Love it.
I mean, the one thing is that, all these filmmakers that come out of film school, and I meet a lot of them after they've gone out, they have no idea what's involved in making a film. The paperwork, the tax credits,
Oh man.
everything, all that nonsense that we all go through. They think it's easy to just go grab a camera and go do it. Well, if you have experience like you and Tina, for example, you could go out and make a doc tomorrow based on your access, your knowledge of film and so on and so forth. But they're greener than grass. They come out and they don't have a clue what they're doing, especially if you want to be a producer. There is no film school in Canada that teaches producing.
No.
So they come to me, they go, well, I've got this great idea. I want to go, okay, great, but how are you going to get them to A? I don't think that's a very sellable idea, number one. Number two is, how are you going to raise the money? Is there a market? All this stuff. And they go, well, we didn't learn any of that. Well, of course you didn't. That's not what film school is.
No, well, I taught briefly, and the first thing I'd say is, guys, I'm sorry to say, but show business is 10% show and 90% business.
Yeah.
It's just really true. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be hamstrung by it. Like, you be aware of it. Like, as you know, that's why you've been so successful, Avi, is because you know that the market is going to be interested in a good story.
Right.
And if it's presented right, and if it's produced for the right amount of money, and then pitched properly, publicized right, it's going to do fine, right? So it's not like it's impossible. It's a lot more complicated than it looks.
But I would say, you picked the right genre of projects to make in documentary, because if you can get a broadcaster attached, you're basically financed.
Yeah.
Whereas in narrative, if you don't get one of the main funders or somebody that's got deep pockets, you're not going to be successful in getting a narrative movie made. And in narrative, the drama doesn't sell, comedy doesn't sell. The only thing that sells right now is horror. And,
Yeah.
I don't necessarily go out of my way to watch horror movies, but I've been making horror movies because it's the only thing that I can finance and I can sell. My film, my drama, Home Free, which, I couldn't get a funder to come on board, even though they all said they loved the script and the team and everything, but they wouldn't give me the money because my category was oversubscribed,
Yeah.
white male. And so
Yeah.
thank God that my father-in-law believed in me and believed in the project and financed the movie, knowing that he probably wouldn't get all of his money back. And it was a slog to get it into festivals, even though it got into over 40. But selling it outside of Canada,
Forget about it.
nobody wants it.
But Abby, when you think about it, like in film school, when I went to film school, my fellow students and I, we talked about this all the time. But why doesn't Canadian drama work? So that was our mission. Our mission
Right.
was to make Canadian drama, because we all wanted to do drama. This was in the era, the incredible era that had seen so many amazing independent films coming out of Hollywood. Like
Right.
Five Easy Pieces, Apocalypse Now, The Conversation, just all of those films. It was such an amazing time. We wanted to do that, and we thought, well, why can't Canadian movies work? French Canadian movies seem to work really well,
Yeah.
and it was so obvious at the time that we're next to this giant America, and they've got the star system. They own most of our theaters, all of that stuff. So we've been fighting against that. We have, all of us have been fighting against that for our whole careers.
Yeah.
We haven't even made a dent in it. It's worse now than it was when we first started. So I think what we finally did was we just gave up. We just stopped making drama. We produced, I don't know, 5 feature movies, and they did okay, but it's just so hard to get a Canadian drama to work. If you don't have a big American star, and if Tom Cruise says yes, you're good, right? But he's not going to.
No.
Trust me, he's not going to, right? So it just seemed like we didn't have an audience. And yet, for documentary, we definitely have an audience. We produce movies like Haida on the Edge of the World, and we were stunned. Like, honestly, I almost fell over that when it hit the festival circuit, people lined up around the block in Toronto and in Vancouver, like literally lined up around the block. And I'm like, what, is there something else playing? Like, what's going on here?
But that was the case on all of your movies. Like after the festival circuit was done, you would play multiple screenings in places like Vancouver and other places, and selling out every single time.
Yeah.
And that went for Haida and Haida Modern and Peace Out and Oil Sands Karaoke and so on and so forth. And in this business, making docs that have lineups around the block is not a common thing, which, it's fact. But you were telling stuff that people never really got a chance to see or knew about. And so they were intrigued, but they were also educated at the same time.
Yes, and I would say, I mean, it's been said about our work a lot, that one of the attractions is that they're not didactic in the sense that they're not dogmatic, rather. That was the word I was looking for. Like, we made a film called Oil Sands Karaoke, and it was about, obviously, a karaoke contest in the tar sands. And it presented the people who work there as human beings. That was a first, because normally they're monsters, right? They're ruining the earth one load of bitumen at a time. But we found that these guys not only were human beings, they were just trying to pay the rent, or pay mortgage or debts or whatever, but they also, some of them could sing like you would not believe. So when we presented that movie, people down south saw what was going on in the tar sands as being a crime against humanity, which it truly is. And people up north, I mean, we premiered the film in Fort McMurray. We got repeated standing ovations. The workers there loved the movie. And that made me feel better than you could possibly imagine. Because what it said was we found the humanity in the story rather than saying, hey man, pollution is bad. We've seen enough of that.
But you also touched on, queer issues and
Yep.
things like that. And in days when people weren't really talking about it,
No.
which, was great. And it spoke to a completely different audience that nobody really in this country was actually ever speaking to.
Yeah.
Isis Rain was so ballsy coming in
So to
in
speak.
that in that hot outfit into the
But I
crazy
mean,
fog.
it was ingenious, that film, and the different layers of A, B, C stories that you were telling, that people in this country were scared to talk about.
And it was also a lot of fun. I think it was Aristotle who said about theater production, he said, we present our shows in an amphitheater that is made out of stone seats and they're really uncomfortable. So you have to give people something to laugh about, something to entertain them, to take their mind off how much their bum hurts from sitting there for an hour and a half, right? So we try and do that. There's got to be a spoonful of sugar here now and then. And Oil Sands Karaoke, I mean, what's more sugar than people singing things like Ain't No Sunshine or Britney Spears songs, My Loneliness Is Killing Me. People love that.
But we
Also,
were
funny you mentioned the music. I mean, it's rare to find a Canadian documentary that used as much music, source music, in the doc. This is before, the docs about famous bands like Anvil and all these Metallica and blah 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 came out. You set a pretty significant marker in the amount of source music that you used and worked with Michael Perlmutter on.
he was incredible.
Give him the plug.
Give him all the credit.
Instinct
Yeah.
and Michael Perlmutter.
But you set the table for it, and I
He
mean,
was amazing.
again, it was an integral part of the film for sure,
Well,
for
Abby,
obvious reasons.
Think about in a film, the budget was under $300,000. We had 24 mainstream hits like "Ain't No Sunshine" or "Hit Me Baby One More Time." I mean, all like top hits in a film with a budget like that. Michael Perlmutter at Instinct made a deal with Universal Music. And it was a really curious and interesting deal, but we hammered away at it. I remember driving around up north, we were on our way from one place to another, on the phone with Michael saying, no, we gotta have this song, we gotta do this. And we were back and forth a million times, but he did it. So we had all those songs and it was just amazing.
You couldn't do that today.
I guess
I don't
not,
think
eh?
so.
No, you couldn't do it. Like the fact that you got it done with the song list that you have in that film,
That's
you
true.
could never pull that deal off ever again.
But
Documentary is different.
Documentary's different. Like when we did a Haida Modern, and again, it was Michael Perlmutter who made that deal. He presented our request to the band Fun. Remember Fun with, what was the song called? It was a huge hit. And that was the only song I wanted. And I mean, they're using it for like big car commercials. It was a huge song. And he presented the argument to them. He said, this is never going to fly. But he went to them and told them about our project. They actually looked at our work. The band looked at our work and they said, hey, we like these guys. They gave us the song. It wasn't for $10, but we could afford it. Yeah.
So now,
Oh, geez.
it's mind blowing. I mean, it just is mind blowing. If you think about
Carry
some
on.
of the
Carry
achievements
on.
that you've
Carry
made.
on. Yeah.
Well, and you also, it should be noted, were the music composer on all of your docs as well,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I started in music. Like I was classically trained as a singer from the time I was about 4 on at 5. And then we had a television show where I was one of the 5 singers on a variety show. It was kind of like Ed Sullivan every
In
week.
Calgary, right?
Yeah, it was very popular all across the prairies. And so I was a singer. We recorded and toured and stuff like that. And then after a brief hiatus to be a hippie and learn how to weld and stuff like that and build with logs, I came back to film school and I've been doing this ever since. But yeah, most of the movies, all the movies that we produced, no, not all. Graham Coleman scored a number of them. But the rest, all our documentaries I've scored. And I play music with my kids all the time. I have 5 guitars and they're always busy.
We both love stuff.
Yeah, totally. No, Tina's a huge music fan. It's just, our house is full of music.
So from the time that you made the doc about, was it Down Here? Is that what it's called?
Down Here, yeah.
Yeah, from that time to present, how has it all changed for you? And how have you seen the industry? I mean, you've talked about flavor of the month kind of scenario, but the funding system is different. The festival system is different. What you've noted. Has the process for you in coming up with projects and making them changed for you over the years?
A lot, yeah.
How?
Coming up is not the problem. Like we always have so many ideas, but to get funding now is very hard. You know, that has really changed because there's so many people who are wanting the money, so that pot is only so big. So
You know,
it's very hard right now.
I tell this story that used to be quite relevant. I don't know if people will relate to it now, but I remember my brother back in the day, he visited the Soviet Union when there still was a Soviet Union, and people kept coming up to him on the street as a Western visitor and saying, "Can I buy your blue jeans? Let me buy your blue jeans. Let me buy your blue jeans." And my brother would say, "Well, don't you guys make blue jeans?" And they said, "Yeah, we have factories that turn them out." And he said, "Well, how come you want mine then?" And they said, "Well, when somebody makes a set of blue jeans in the Soviet Union, the number one criteria for those blue jeans is to please the party bosses. The number two criteria is to use properly sourced material from the party boss's friends. The number three criteria, and it just went down the line, and about number 10 on the list was to make a pair of presentable blue jeans. And it showed Soviet blue jeans were awful, right? But he said, America, when they make a pair of blue jeans, the number one criterion is that they look great."
Based on what you've said, you can fill the landscape with 5 whatever movies that address what you've just said and can get financed based on what you've just said, because
Maybe.
your projects are great. Forget good, they're great. But it's a matter of, like, to me, the story of the day right now is anything about anybody interesting. Like whether it's an artist, a musician, or a celebrity, or and you and I and Tina have had these conversations numerous times about certain people and certain things that are completely sellable, not only within Canada but outside of Canada. And many Canadian filmmakers don't think about accessing monies, etc., from outside of Canada to help trigger a project. But I believe that there is lots of stories that can be told that check a box for broadcasters, so they're not nervous about whether they're going to put money into something that's going to work right for them and for the country and their audience. I think part of it is a little bit of, gambling, so to speak. But I also think, they're not going to necessarily get, again, it's access, right? You have access, I have access. The young people of today do not have access like we do, or the experience to, if we don't have access, how to get the access. I think that there's a lot of possibilities out there that, if we put our heads together, I think would bring something realistically possible.
And times have always been.
It's always been tough.
It's always
it's cyclical.
like that. So so we'll see.
No, you're absolutely right, Avi, and that's what we do. That's all we do is we hang out with each other, talk about stuff, and from that ideas come. We certainly have strong ideas about what constitutes the basis for a good story, and it's hard to find a good one. It really is.
And sometimes we're not at the right moment, like you said with the Vancouver one, with the housing one. In a way, that would be maybe a better story now to bring out. And it's our latest film, Talk About Lonely. That is a big subject. I don't know if we hit it right with the way we did it, but it's an interesting conversation, and maybe it will get more interesting in time, and so you never know if you're hitting it at the right moment, the stories that you're telling, or if you have to maybe even reconsider it and think, maybe, that was a great idea, but now I'm going to go and make it bigger, like or make it dip.
Or let it simmer. Let
Yeah.
it simmer in the moonlight. Like we've got so many ideas we've had over the years that just sit there in the file, and then you go, wait a minute, that was really cool, or that's part of that is going to be part of this and stuff. So, but one of the things I always say is the bus analogy, where if you're sitting next to somebody on the bus and they ask you what you do and you tell them you're a filmmaker and they go, yeah, what are you working on? You tell them your story in 2 sentences. If they don't go, wow, that sounds like a really good idea for a movie, you either need to work on your pitch or it isn't a good idea for the movie. If somebody says, oh, I got this idea about this artist that nobody's heard of, but he's really great, so I'm going to make a movie about him. You go, well, yeah, that's your subject. What's your story? What's the story? Like, this guy's battling, I don't know, cancer or something. Like, what's the story? So that's a big thing. And I sound like I know what I'm talking about. I don't, because we frequently fall in love with the subject, the housing crisis. But what's the story? So that's a big one. What's the story? But they're out there. I mean, we're living in the most dramatic times of our lives. If you can't pick a story out of that, then you shouldn't be in this business.
We're focusing on the moon right now.
Jeez. Yeah.
Oh, Tina. But I mean, I think, yes, it's harder to make films today, but I feel like it's a perfect time for independent cinema. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
The studios are all in, free fall. You're not seeing as much studio work happening in Canada as they used to. LA, some of the big studios have been bought as real estate and are being closed down. I think the timing is right now for independent cinema to make a bit of a comeback. I mean, there's a lot of talk on the street and in the industry and at markets about how the timing for independent cinema is better now than it's ever been, and to get films made. And I believe that when going to the markets like I do every year, Berlin, Cannes, and so on, you're seeing definitely, and especially in films being played, are all mostly independent now. And I do think that there is a real opportunity, and because you guys run what you would call a mom and pop shop, so to speak, the ability to make film is a lot simpler, and you've got that sort of,
That's true.
Well,
you have the ingredients to do it.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because I think that's a really positive thing to talk about. If you look behind us, that's not a fake background. That's our editing suite. That's an app behind Tina, and it's a current project sitting on there. We, like, over the course of our careers, which have been quite long, we've been lucky enough to acquire many of the skills that it takes to make a movie. So there are better DPs than me. Certainly Tina's one of them. And we rely on outside help when we've got budget and when we've got schedule. But I mean, a simple example is when we're out in the field, we can have a large crew for a very short period of time, or we can have a tiny crew, which is often just Tina and I for a very long period of time. So our films tend to be quite beautiful because we spend the time there. We'll wake up in the morning, come out of the tent and see that it's an amazing sunrise. You shoot that. And if it's not, you wait a day. You go shoot something else. So, we're capable
We're
of...
privileged. Like
Yeah,
that.
we are privileged. We have our own equipment. It's constantly expensive to keep updating it, but still, we know how to use it. We've got the knowledge to use that. And when the key areas where we don't have the knowledge, we've got the most amazing people that we work with over and over and over again. People like Bill Shepard at DBC Sound, who just step up and make our movies sound great. So I think it's important. It's really key for filmmakers, especially starting filmmakers, to do everything they can to acquire as many of the skills as they can. Because if you're just sitting there waiting to get money so you can start hiring a crew, you're just in line with everybody else. Whereas if you can pick up a camera and go out and start shooting some of this stuff yourself and cutting it together, it ain't rocket science. It's complicated, but we can all learn how to do that. And I think besides, it's wonderfully fun. It's a really great thing to do. It's a great thing to expand your mind, and we love it.
Yeah.
And for me, that being said, that ability to be able to just say, you know what, we got this great idea. We're just going to go out tomorrow and we're going to go and shoot something. Even shooting a little something that gets you enough to show a broadcaster to give them a taste of what they could have, which I think, as you know, back in the old days of working with Murray and Rudy and our friend from CBC Doc Channel and things like that. That's all they want to see. They want to see just a little snippet of what the story could be, and if so, they jump on board tomorrow.
It's true.
And that still happens today, especially in doc, more so than narrative, because narrative I never recommend shooting a proof of concept because it never turns out the way you want it, and it gives a bad taste to whoever it is that you show it to. But in doc, they all care about what they're seeing. It's who is the person who's the subject matter? What is this? What are the stakes involved in the storytelling that you're trying to do and things like that? So, and I would say to you, in speaking with a lot of the broadcasters over the course of the last 6 months, they're looking for that special something that they don't get a chance to see from the newer generation of filmmakers, because most of the stuff is not geared towards what the broadcaster really wants, whereas people like you and me and many other friends of ours who live in the doc space, they know how to tell those stories in a 3 or 4 minute sizzle to get a broadcaster excited.
No, that's so. I mean, we've been in so many pitch situations where, talk is cheap, right? Paper, whatever. If you can show them something, that's the person, that's the woman that we're talking about, or that's the place. That just picture's worth 1,000 words for sure. And you can't hire somebody to do that unless you're independently wealthy.
The problem is that we find so many characters doing the filmmaking, and they are hard to put in a sizzle because we haven't met them. So
that's really true.
The concept is one thing, but then to actually, it has changed with us. Like All Saints Karaoke, for example, the people that we met were, we spent a couple of weeks in the bar actually just seeing people getting up and going to the stage, and that's how we found them. And then we would talk with them and see that they actually are a great character. That all is hard to do beforehand, So if you have a one-person film where you focus on one character, that's easier.
It's different, yeah.
But if you're going out and making a movie like the Down Here one, where Charles, that was incredible. Charles did that all by himself. He went down into the downtown east side, and he had the camera. He had a guy helping him a little bit, but in the beginning,
just to protect me from getting beat up, basically.
Yeah, but the interviews are so intense because there's nobody there but only Charles with the camera, and he would find these incredible characters like that. But
But that's the only way that film ever gets made.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because that's it's a side thing, but it's a really important one. For interviews, Tina and I never have any more than just ourselves. And for Down Here, it was just me. I was the only person there. Right. Consequently, people would tell me things they would never tell their doctor. Mm-hmm. Then it's up to me to decide whether to use them or not. But right. And that's a really heavy moral responsibility. But right. Our movies are conversations. I remember I was getting interviewed by a CBC person one time. And after the interview, we were just kind of comparing notes about workflow and stuff. And she said, well, the first most important thing I learned in interviewing is it's not a conversation. I want something from you. So I'm listening to you and I'm prodding you. I'm trying to get you to, and I went, well, that's your workflow, but I work in a different medium. In my medium, it is a conversation. So like I talk maybe, I don't know, a quarter of the time. Avi, you know me, you're thinking I'm lying. It's probably 3/4 of the time. But no, and Robert Davidson always laughs about how much I talk because it is truly a conversation. And that makes it so intimate. The people, they're not, with so many modern documentaries, like the Springsteen one or the A Man on the Run McCartney one, which I recommend.
Yeah.
That a person will be allowed to say, well, back then things were different. Cut. Oh, I remember I met, George Harrison in Bristol. Cut. Like, you get these tiny little clips, and that's bullshit. Like, to me, a paragraph is what I come to you for.
Yeah.
I want to know what you have to say. And it's a different style of movie, but it just, if you and I are having a conversation, I'm not going to cut you off every 2 seconds. I'm going to listen to what you have to say.
Well, let me do it. Just
Interrupting cow.
But it's true. It's true. I find the docs have changed quite a bit, especially when you're telling a story about a particular person, is that the conversations don't go on for very long. They're editing, they're intercutting with all kinds of other stuff. There's a lot of voiceover and over stuff now because they don't want to see the person talking. Whatever the case may be, it's not like docs of days gone by, like, the people that we grew up watching, and their names are not coming to me right now, but guys like
Herzog's a great example.
What's that? Herzog,
Werner Herzog's a great example.
Yeah.
But it's funny that
Or Alan King, right?
Maisel brothers, all those guys, yeah.
that a lot of the films are shot now in
Vertical.
because and you only have so many seconds of time. You're going
Right.
like, is this interesting? No.
Yeah.
And so it's that's also a huge change.
Yeah.
So,
Also, the people tell us that the audience has a very short attention span. I think that is bullshit. I think that audiences have as long attention span as you can entertain them and keep them involved. Like they say that kids now only have a 7-minute attention span. That's not our experience at all. I'll tell you an example. I taught briefly, and the first thing I would show the students, they were like second, third year film students, I'd show them this really, really bad VHS tape of Nando Parado, one of the two guys who walked out from the plane crash in the Andes when the football players crashed and there was all the cannibalism and stuff. Nando Parado did a series of speaking tours around the world where he just talked about his experiences. So here he is this guy standing in front of a podium, very poorly lit, long lens from way back on the other side of the room. The audio was okay, but it's just that, nothing else, just this guy talking. So he starts talking and he goes, yada, yada, yada. So I'd let it play for about maybe 10 minutes and then I'd stop. And the reaction was always exactly the same. Everybody would go, no, keep going. It's such a great story. It's so cool. And I went, okay, how many visual effects did we see? How many car crashes did we see? How many sex scenes did we see? How much music did we hear? There was nothing. It was just this guy, this really, really engaging guy, telling the most incredible story. And that was the best lesson I think I ever taught. Because if you've got a story, people will listen. Attention span, a schmenschen span. That's bullshit. I think that, I didn't do that right. I think that people will listen as long as you're interesting. And you shouldn't listen to the broadcasters or whomever who say, well, this is the style that people are watching today. You have your own style.
I mean, listen, I could talk at length about storytelling and how to properly tell a story. And most times telling a story is just letting somebody talk and just letting the camera hold on them, maybe go in tighter, whatever. But the story that they're telling could be the most fascinating story you'll ever hear in your entire life. And that's you getting that on film or tape or whatever, being a great filmmaker, right? And
Yeah.
I think that is a lesson that people should learn is pay attention to the story that you're telling and decide on what the story you're telling is, and are people interested in watching that storytelling?
For sure. You look at a Herzog film, for example. Both he and I admire much of his work very much. Everybody you see talking in a Werner Herzog film, they're talking to Werner Herzog. They would sound different if they were talking to somebody else. He has an effect on people. Same thing with Michael Moore, in a different way. But everybody who makes documentary films, the person you see on the screen telling their story, they're telling their story to me.
Right.
And so our presence in the room has a dramatic impact on the way that they tell their story and how they present. You're different with everybody that you talk to. So it's really the filmmaker's job, their role, to create an environment within which that person can tell the story to the best of their ability.
What a great way to end this conversation, at least part one of this conversation.
But we have to come back?
Well, you don't have to, but I may make you.
Let's
Mike
make a really
Boone.
great movie together.
Yeah,
and
let's
then
make a
come
movie.
back.
Yes, we got to make a movie together. Well, you know that. Don't think that I'm not going to reach out to you after this podcast and say to you, we need to have a call to talk about what we're going to do. Mike, did you want to ask any questions or make any comments?
Yeah, fantastic conversation as usual, but I thought there'd be more discussion about Charles and the Calgary Safety Roundup.
It's funny because Mike, it's funny that you say that, because when Avi just said, well, let's talk about a project, I've been dreaming for years about doing a film about the Roundup because it's such a wacky story. I mean, it's this group of 8-year-old kids whose voices hadn't changed singing cowboy songs in Calgary, and they got better ratings than Hockey Night in Canada and the Beverly Hillbillies for like a half a decade. Traveled all over the country, met prime ministers, governor generals, recorded, and it's a great piece of Western Canadian history. But unfortunately, it was the film era, and all the tapes were recycled, and so there's no movie footage at all of it. There's lots of stills, but I want so much to do it. I just can't find a way in. I could do it as a drama, but I don't know how well that.
No, I think you could do it as a documentary.
It's a great story.
It's a great story, and it's easier to finance a documentary. And I've said this to you: it's easier to finance a documentary than it is to finance a feature.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's a great story.
Many of the people are still alive, and I think about Reds, that great film of Warren Beatty's. Or no, actually, the one I think about is When Harry Met Sally.
Right.
Wonderful, absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Rob Reiner.
Rob Reiner's film. Yeah. God rest in peace, man.
Yeah.
That in When Harry Met Sally, he kept cutting away to these old couples who'd sit there and say, "I remember the first time we kissed," and it's just so great. And that would be the Safety Roundup thing, because they'd be all these old people saying, "All those little boys got on my nerve. I wanted to watch Hockey Night. We had to watch that goddamn thing." It's a really good story.
Honestly, it's a great story. When you pitched that to me years ago, I said at the time, listen, why are you not doing this as a documentary? Forget about the drama, because the funders aren't intelligent enough to give us the money to tell this in a dramatic film or dramedy film. I think as a doc would be amazing. And thanks for bringing.
Think about one of our singers, one of the partners on the show, went on to sing. It was Dixie Lee Stone with the original cast, the Billy Jack song,
right?
Soldier, Go Ahead and Hate Your Neighbor. I mean, people did stuff, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. Anything else? Anything other comments, Mr. Boone?
Yeah, I don't want to bury the lead on that one, but Charles sang both kinds, country and Western. So let's make sure the people know you were one of those kids singing.
You betcha. You go on you just search Calgary Safety Roundup, catchy name, huh? Search that, and there's a really cool home movie, again, that Tina and I made about that for a reunion, I don't know, 15 years ago, and you get the flavor of the thing.
There's your sizzle reel, Mr. Wilkinson.
Yeah. Don Davis.
That's your sizzle reel.
Remember Don Davis, the bald-headed military guy from, was it MacGyver or one of those shows? Don Davis, yeah, he was a dear friend, and we worked together a number of times. I cast him in a bunch of stuff, and he was such a cool guy, and he had that big, heavy Texan drawl. Right. He came and narrated the thing. He recorded narration for it, and it just made it so warm. And I remember there's a very sensitive part in the story where it involved one of the children on the show passing.
Right.
And it was really tough, Don, doing that, because he's such a big, strong guy, and he couldn't get through it. He'd get half the line out, and he'd stop, and he'd go like that. But he finally got it. That was quite something.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, there's the sizzle right there, man.
It kind of is. Right, maybe we should talk about this, Abby.
It's right there. It's right there.
Let's do it.
All right. Sounds good. Listen.
Nice to hang out with you.
Thanks, Mike, for bringing
I'm
that up.
so happy to see you both.
Me too.
Miss you so much. I have huge respect for the work that you do, for the people that you are, how much you've welcomed me into your lives. I mean, as they say in Hebrew, you're mishpacha to me, and my family. And I hope that I'm definitely going to reach out after this today and let's get on a Zoom and talk about it. But thank you for taking the time to be with me today on Unleashed. Thank you to the audience out there for listening to Unleashed, a producer's guide to indie filmmaking. My name's Avi Federgreen, and we'll see you next time.